Monday morning shift number 1. Wish that the day was over and done. Climb in the cage, boy, let her roll. We're the warriors who fight for the coal.
The story of coal mining in the Lofthouse and Outwood area is a very ancient one. Indeed, it is said that there have been remains of Roman coal mining discovered in the locality, in fact at Thorpe-on-the-Hill, quite close by. We know that in the 1700s and again early in the 19th century there was quite large-scale working, particularly of the Hague Moor seam of coal, which was an excellent house coal. But it wasn't until the 1870s that Lofthouse Colliery came into existence. It came into existence essentially for two reasons, both of course connected with the potential market for coal. And by this time, coal from the West Riding coalfield was going not only to London, but going out via Goole and Hull across to Western Europe, and indeed to some extent being sold also in the industrial northwest, in South Lancashire and North Cheshire. The first of the reasons for the development of Lofthouse was the opening in 1866 of the mainline railway, the shortest route then as now between Leeds and London. The other reason for the development of a large colliery at Lofthouse was the boom in the English economy of the early part of the 1870s. The price of coal was going up and the demand for coal was increasing also. Lofthouse Colliery was in fact to be only one of several, indeed many, which were sunk in the West Riding in this same period. But Lofthouse was unusual in that it was one of only a handful which were started off as cooperative collieries. The men were involved in the system of cooperation with the company, and the company also was involved in economic cooperation with its customers. The Leeds Industrial Cooperative Society was indeed one of the shareholders in this new Lofthouse Cooperative Colliery Company which was established. And work was begun with the cutting of the first sods for shaft sinking at Lofthouse, close to the railway line, in 1873. Work went ahead despite the fact that the economic boom proved, as do so many, to be comparatively short-lived, and the first coals were drawn from the new colliery in 1877. The colliery company soon found that its rivals as cooperative collieries were unsuccessful, so it soon dropped its cooperative word of its title, becoming simply the Lofthouse Colliery Company Limited. It found, the company that is, it found that it was possible to envisage means of transporting its coal other than that of the Great Northern Main Line Railway, which ran alongside the new pit. The Colliery Company reopened the in part ancient tramway, which was able to take its coals down for loading in the boats at Stanley Ferry Basin on the Aire and Calder navigation. That was done early in the 1880s and provided, of course, a rival form of transport for its coals from the pit. The Aire and Calder navigation had then been modernised, and it was possible to carry coal in huge quantities, largely in trains of Tom Puddings, for export from Goole and from Hull. The colliery also had an interesting labour history, and I have the minute and account books of the Lofthouse branch of the Yorkshire Miners Association, later of course of the National Union of Miners. And these reveal many interesting details about, of course, petty disputes in the working of the colliery, but also about the negotiations which were necessary for the making of the men's price lists, that is the printed list of prices paid to colliers for doing particular kinds of work in particular seams which were worked at the colliery, and many other records relating to the men's interests, not least of which was their interest in the banner which they purchased, and which of course they proudly displayed at the miners' galas and indeed at other social events. The colliery was to survive into the 1980s, and when finally it was closed, it still employed some 900 men and boys at the time. The colliery had been sunk, yes, close to a railway line which gave it excellent transport facilities, but it had been sunk rather out in the country, at a considerable distance from the village of Lofthouse, although it carried that village's name in its title, and in fact quite close to the initially small village of Outwood. Outwood was only beginning to develop as a community when Lofthouse Colliery was sunk. Immense numbers of colliers and their families, immigrants, many of them to the area, were brought to work in the new pit, as was customary with any new colliery. And of course these people, these men and their families, required a whole variety of facilities, not only houses, but they required public houses, working men's clubs, churches and chapels, schools, shops, and all these were provided, creating in fact a new community, essentially a completely new community, that of Outwood, a community which retains, of course, very much its individuality into our own day. There even was for a short period an Outwood Urban District Council, although quite shortly that was subsumed into the Stanley Urban District Council. The story of Lofthouse Colliery and of its men I have described in this book of mine called Mine and Men, Company Management and Men at Lofthouse Colliery. Anyone who is interested to read more deeply into the really quite fascinating history of Lofthouse Colliery will be able to borrow a copy from their local public library and do so. And all I can hope is that they will enjoy its reading.
Wheels of the headgear spin around, cage like a stone is dropping down. Feel the blood in